Hi. This one wants to be my co-host today, and I'm just saying it's not going to work for me. It isn't. Oh, this cat. Anyway, hi guys. It's going to be a special Friday ThoughtFLOW today. Nikki is coming, though the cat is pretty interesting herself. Maybe she'll participate. Who knows? I doubt it. Welcome, those of you just coming in. Hi, Oran. Or Han, I think. She is a sweet girl. I can understand her being jealous, but you know what? She's a bit of a pain. She's very needy. Hi, my co-host.
Hello.
How are you? Oh, it looks divine out there.
It's about to rain.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think I have an hour.
we have had
And
enough of that.
kitty, you are not upstaging me.
She will try though. She will try, won't you,
Look
Vic?
at her. Look at her. She's like, yes, mommy.
Oh,
Speak on it.
listen, she has whipped so much stuff off of my desk today that I'm like, I'm just done. I'm like, I guess I should just give up. Clearly, you're in charge here. This cat, I swear.
When animals rain.
They always rain. That's the thing. And something tells me it's kind of supposed to be that way, but I like to entertain the false sense of control. I don't know. Here we are, Nikki. It's a Friday ThoughtFLOW. We've never done this before. A Friday ThoughtFLOW midday. Say it ain't so. It's so.
It's so.
Yeah.
One disclaimer. It is probably going to rain, but I'm going to stay out here for as long as I can. But once I go inside, there is an electrician in my house. And he is mad drilling and plumbing pipe. So that's why I was outside.
That's gonna be interesting. But we've done ThoughtFLOW from your car. So
We have.
I mean, I just feel like we should get the tour. It's fine, wherever you end up. Hey, Erin, how are you? I feel like I haven't seen Erin in forever. And
Yeah.
so exactly, the show. Electricians be damned. The show must go on, as it should be. So, Nikki, Southlake. Let's just get right into it, because it's going to lead to a discussion about Texas in general. And, I just feel like we need to just right in.
Dive right in. Dive right in. Well,
Yeah.
I will say this. When I listened to there's like a little promo podcast or a little introduction to the series, and garden background, please. And just on the intro, I was like, and I'm texting Misty, and I'm like, why did you send this to me to listen to? I'm like, I can't even get through the freaking introduction. And yeah, I had to go back, and I'm looking through the podcast information, and I'm like, what 2018, 2019? Not even I don't know, 1990 or 19. No, just full on like last year, because nobody had last year because it was the pandemic year, so nobody had last year. But just full on like modern day, because that's current. That's current. These kids are still, these guys are sophomores in high school. Yes, it's raining. Okay, I'm going to go inside now. So.
That lasted long. Well, and let's give a background first. So NBC is doing a 6-part podcast series called Southlake. If you haven't taken a look at it, I don't even remember how I found it. Yay, I love it when clients are late so we can hang out. I don't know how I found it, but either way, I tuned into it, and I had to listen. Southlake is a school district in North Texas. It's
Keep
very,
talking.
very affluent. And a couple of years ago, you may notice you may remember if you're in the United States, there were some viral videos that ended up being big news stories about, kids cheering at the end, cheering the N-word and dropping the N-word at a school dance and all of this stuff. And the parents were saying our community isn't racist and all this stuff. Thank you, Harmony. There is the link to the podcast if you want to take a look.
Pew pew.
Pew pew. So, I listened to it because, well, for a number of reasons. One, I wanted to kind of see, what the evolution is. Those incidents happened in 2018, 2019, as Nikki said. But then obviously there's a podcast happening right now. So there's more going on. And boy, is there more going on. So because of what happened in 2018 and 19, this school district had the foresight, it's not foresight, I guess it's the smarts to initiate a plan or a planning committee to create a diversity and equity and inclusion strategy for the school, which I think is a great idea. However, then COVID happened and they couldn't implement it. And then after that, George Floyd, all of these things happened. And then the big discussion about CRT started, critical race theory. And then, so the parents in this district kind of went a little bit bananas. They started having these meetings, and you've seen these crazy viral school board meetings where people are punching each other rather than having conversations. Now there's been several lawsuits to keep, hi Tammy, there have been several lawsuits to keep this principal and this committee from implementing these diversity and equity inclusion plans that they had created, which to me in itself is bananas. They believe that teaching their children, it's hard to even say because it's so ridiculous. These parents believe that teaching their children about race is intended to make them feel badly about their own race. And because there are no race problems in their community, clearly, I mean, this is them talking now. There are no race problems in their community. Talking about race, discussing race is actually going to create problems for their students. So I have to ask anybody out there that wants to venture an opinion, a statement, whatever. Oh, Texas, exactly. I want to ask, what are people so afraid of? How is it that our cherubs can play football and get hit in the head, and they can do all of that? They can drive cars, they can go off to college eventually, but we have to protect them from discussions that affect their fellow man. That's the background.
I want to add to the background just a little bit. So extremely affluent community. These are $1 million homes. I think one of the descriptions was
$250,000 a year.
Right, people with fountains in front of their houses. And one of the main characters of the podcast is the wife of, he is now deceased. You know how I am about names, people. I don't remember names. But professional football players. So that type of wealth, but also that type of notoriety. So the wife is the widow, or pardon me, the main woman who you'll hear speaking. She is the widow of a Dallas Cowboy player who had then gone on to do some other things. You'll hear it if you listen to the podcast. And that plays into what I'm saying, plays into it, because there is a specific conversation that one of the young women has, whereas an elementary school child, she was asked, what number is her father? And she was like, what? She didn't understand, because it was the assumption that because they lived there, that he was a pro ball player. And in actuality, her parents are actors. He's Power Ranger, go go Power Ranger. Sorry, Mighty Morphin Power. Oh, sorry. Okay, so
Come back.
but but that was we have spoken about this acceptable Black people. So you're here, you're in this wholly just affluent community. So if you're brown, that must mean that your father plays for Dallas. So what's his number?
Well, and
So
isn't that
buck on the
a
block.
way? Isn't that, no, it's not even that. It's a way to say, well, we have family money. We have this, our money came from wherever.
Thank you, Harmony.
I mean, she's
But
just
I don't remember anybody's name.
always on the ball. I really think that you two should always be in the same space. So then you don't have to worry about embarrassing you. Harmony's just in there. But again, that is the way that people say you have wealth, okay, but you just got it because you play football.
Right.
It's a way of delineating between, this wealth is more important than this wealth. It's another way of othering. And the reason why I thought this article, this podcast was important was because people can see then, everyone wants to say these things are happening in just this kind of neighborhood or that kind of neighborhood. This is wealth upon wealth. It's still happening. And let's talk demographics of this district. This school, the high school graduating class graduated 700 students. Only 18 were Black. And so, because I was so into this story,
Yeah,
I fall down a rabbit.
it's I just want to respond to Harmony. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And there's a bigger conversation that goes on. And I'm not going to detract from the conversation, but there's a bigger conversation that goes on in the Black community about kids playing sports because it almost kind of funnel the, you guys ever gone bowling? There's bumper bowling, so they get a gutter, but it kind of keeps them in that space. And you begin to be identified not only as this, oh, you play pro ball, but also it it's an into a community that because you have the means to provide, and any Black player will tell you when they establish a family, they want what every other family on planet Earth wants, which is to have their kids live in a good home environment, neighborhood, and to be able to access good education, good, excellent education. I wouldn't even say good, but excellent education. And this is how this factors in. It's not just, a wealthy ball player going, or a ball player with a great contract going, oh, I just want to live around a bunch of white people. No. And this is spoken about to some extent in the podcast, that Black people, regardless of their means, once they have children and then school age children, they must make that choice to move into a space where they know they will not see themselves on a daily basis in that way. And they must make that sacrifice to be in that environment. But then it goes beyond that. And there is a mother who speaks about this. Did you make a mistake? Mm-hmm. Did we as parents make a mistake by bringing our kids into this area and having to subject them to things that we know they're going to be subjected to? And the question becomes, at what age will they be subjected to that? It's not when or if, it's pardon me, it's at what age?
It is a sacrifice that people, you don't feel like you have to do it. You know you have to do it. in order to make sure that your children and their children are going to have access to the best. But stepping into it, that your kids, you're going to have to be a ninja. You're going to have to make sure that you have your eyes on them and your ears on them. You're going to have to be watching every person that they interface with over and over again. So understand that this is top of mind for any person of Black and brown skin tone who's moving into a space where they weren't necessarily meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And for education, something that all children are supposed to be guaranteed anyway. So they might get that education, but what kind of education are they getting?
And it's not like someone said, oh, here, buy this $2 million house and we'll sell it to you for $200,000. These are people who have the means financially to move into these neighborhoods.
Right.
No one is giving them $2 million homes. And for just as a point of reference, the family that moved from LA, Power Rangers, the family that moved from LA, they were shocked at the size of the home, the land that they could get because they came from LA.
Right. But
they were shocked at what they could buy with their money. And they were like, well, why would we not move here? We literally just moved out of, 1,000 square, it wasn't 1,000 square feet, but, they were like, oh my gosh, we have this 4,000 or 5,000 square foot home and land and an excellent school system. What? And we don't have to pay for private school? Okay. So these are people who have the means to live here. No one is giving them anything. They wrote their checks from their bank accounts from the monies that they earned.
Right. This is not a hardship case.
No.
And then, once again, there's still this whole, listen, you guys know that I call myself a realist with cynical tendencies. It is very, very upsetting, again, to know that where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a way to other your child is going to be othered. And the Cornish, Robin Cornish speaks to this throughout. Hi, Coach Robin. Throughout the podcast.
And one of the Martinis joined us too. Hey, yes. Martin.
Hi, Martin. Martin's been loading us up here. And anyway, so getting back to in the scroll here, Harmony listened to it and she said, how about the girl being told that her schedule should be changed so she doesn't have to be around?
Ooh.
So I'll give you the backstory. So you guys have to listen to this podcast. I'm telling you, it will make you mad. Nikki was crying and running over squirrels at the park. You know how I feel about squirrels. After she listened to it, she's like, why'd you do this to me? But it's an important conversation once again. Talking about creating trauma, talking about the things we need to do as people to come together. So this high school student who's now graduated was in a class where one of her classmates, white male, was dropping the N-word. Just like I just said hi. That's the way he was dropping the N-word. And she was like, that's it. So she excused herself from class, went to the principal and reported it. The principal does what principals do, calls him down. He denies it. She's recording this conversation because in Texas, where law is really just kind of this magical idea of like, there could be rules. Oh, screw that. In Texas, you can record and the other person does not have to consent. So she recorded this conversation. The kid is denying it and she is not letting him wiggle off the hook. She has got him pinned. And the principal says to her, oh, girl, you know what, girl? You're too smart.
And he calls her girl.
I felt like I was watching the Real House Principals of whatever town, scratch my ass, Texas. He's like, girl, come on, girl, you got too much going on for yourself. You're too pretty and you're too smart and you're going somewhere in your life. And that kid,
He sexismed her, he racialized, he did all the things in one conversation. I was like, dude, could you find some more things to just discriminate?
but you know what he didn't do? He didn't take the lead. He did not act as a principal should, which would have been to reprimand and discipline the kid that was committing the offensive behavior. Instead,
No.
like Harmony pointed out, what he said was, I can move you to a different class so you don't have to deal with it. And that's what he did. So essentially, he penalized the girl who, one, did what the school code says, report the behavior. Two, had to sit there and be gaslit by this troglodyte. And three, then had to put up with, girl, you just need to remember how beautiful you are. What in the actual hell? And yes, how is this allowed to happen in 2001? Fair question, because this is happening everywhere. Welcome.
Hi, Everly. And I'm going to go back because I believe this is because, of course, I have to like listen to it again. I do have to listen to it again.
Because you were committing squirrel murder when you were listening the first time. You couldn't focus.
But I believe this is the same young woman who, when she started school, white girls came up to her and said, matter of factly, these are like first, second, third grade, somewhere in elementary school. White girls came up to her and said, well, you know, we can't play with you because you're brown. So this has been her entire primary education. And she is now a sophomore in high school or college.
Of us, though, Nikki, is this our primary? I mean, we all started this way.
Yes.
And what really, really sucks is you and I are like 30 minutes till the hover round. You know, we're getting a little old here, a little long in the tooth. This nonsense is still going on. And in the meantime, we have schools, we have this particular district. The principal has been sued. Again, I said it earlier, but for those of you just coming in, we're talking about the Southlake podcast on NBC. You got to check it out. It's a 6-parter. They've aired 2 parts so far. They have filed lawsuits so that the school cannot talk about race, well, CRT, diversity, inclusion, or whatever. And yet they won't correct the children who are engaging in racialized speech, language attacks, etc. Freely.
This is coming out of.
Yes. And when the press shows up, they say, we aren't racist. We don't do racist things. Well, what do you call it? It's not needlepoint.
One of the kids was told on the way back from the bus, I believe this is Robin Cornish's kids. It was the day that Rosa Parks passed. And kids on the bus told her kids, Rosa Parks is dead, so you need to go sit in the back of the bus now.
Yes.
And never mind the fact that I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but Rosa Parks resided in Detroit, and she just didn't have any means. And the owner of, is it Little Caesars?
I don't know.
The owner, I feel like I want to say it's Little Caesars. He paid her rent the last years of her life.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And he is spearheading her house being considered a monument. He is spearheading that effort. But yes, he paid her rent the last years of her life.
Nice.
But yes, so basically I like to throw in a little history every now and then. And yes, Fred Hampton's birthday was the other day. I'm sorry, I digress. But no, it's like these are things that are happening. So they're learning about Black history, but they're learning about it so that it is shaped in the way for them to use it to continue trauma. Rosa Parks has died, so now you need to go sit in the back of the bus. Another student was told, telling jokes. This is in elementary school. I want to be real extra crispy clear about this. This was, James, don't freaking drive and listen to ThoughtFLOW.
No, he's listening to Southlake. Yeah, no crashing. You've got that beautiful puppy. Don't do it.
So another kid, and this is elementary because I keep reiterating that because I want you to understand the ages of this indoctrination. This is how these kids are being indoctrinated. This is elementary school. Was telling a joke to a Black kid. How do you get a Black man out of a tree, or Black boy, whatever he said? And the punchline was fucking cut the rope.
That's exactly what he said. And
these are elementary kids.
They weren't born saying that stuff.
Third, fourth, fifth grade. He heard that joke from somewhere, or he was allowed to listen to something that has this content. These were not high schoolers. No, in high school, they just freely start letting the freak flag fly and saying the N-word. Not asking permission to say, because that's a thing too, where Black kids will ask, or pardon me, white kids will ask Black kids if they can have a pass to say the N-word. Then the white kids in high school took it a step further and called discrimination. Why do the Black kids get to say this word, but we don't? Where's our freedom of speech? Are you freaking kidding me? But I digress because I have an issue with Black people saying the N-word. But
100%. If you weren't going to go there, I was. You see my arms? I was getting serious.
I'm not going to tell my 84-year-old dad, and my dad does say the N-word, and I'm like, Daddy, you can't say that word in front of the kids. Like, I understand. You're going to have to be with your people, with your men, little old men sitting at the McDonald's drinking coffee, and y'all can shout the N-word all you want to. But to cite freedom of speech, this is why we have Texas, take a note. This is why we have laws and legislation. Hate speech is different because it incites. That is why we have this legislation for hate speech. Let's go to Germany. Bob, back to you. Let's go to Germany. You can't just run around Germany. It is illegal to throw your hand up in the air with your palm down and do the thing. It is illegal. They have no tolerance. Does it mean that people don't do it? We know that there is a right-wing movement in Germany. We know that. But the country as a whole says, no, shut that shit down.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't run around Germany openly wearing swastikas on your arm. You can't do that.
Right.
You can't use and say the name of Hitler as if it's a term of endearment and you wish he would come back from the dead. You can't do that because the country of Germany understands the impact of what happened by letting that madman run loose. You can't do that in Germany because they know that it was bad and wrong.
But you know what they do here? They build monuments. They build monuments and they tell the stories of the people on the monument.
The people who lost. The people who lost.
The people who committed treason. The people who committed treason against the country that's supposed to be so great and the best country in the world. And then we tell that history. And then when people ask to have the honest history that is come from every part of this country. So whether you're brown or Black or Asian or whatever, we can talk about everybody's history but the brown ones. Because, hey, we're allowed to have 4 historical figures that we talk about.
And for the record, across the Midwest in this country, racial crimes are up 44%, with the numbers highest amongst, I'm going to let you guess. Yeah, you know it's Black people. You know it's Black people. You know it's Black people.
What?
So when you say, I'm not going to call you out, but if you If anyone on here has ever said, or you've heard someone say, why does it always have to be about race? Huh.
Because it is all about race. It is at the end of the day, and I hate saying it. I do. Nobody wants to say it. Nobody wants to live their life being
Quack, quack,
marginalized
waddle,
down to the
waddle.
lowest common denominator, but that's what it is.
Quack, quack, waddle, waddle.
Doesn't get better until you address it. Meanwhile, we've got school boards across the country, people needing police escort into and out of school board meetings because somebody dared to say that we should talk about race. Yes,
Robin, have you
American
changed the
history
context?
is full of sore losers.
Sore lovers. I'm like, we could take
Oh,
that.
lovers. Oh, damn.
She meant losers. Sore lovers. We could take that so many directions,
I mean,
Robin.
sore lovers.
Just so many directions.
Is that the fluffer? I don't know, Robin. Now I have too many questions.
Now we know what Robin's thinking about
I'm
it Friday
saying.
at noon.
Do I hear Barry White? Anyway, yeah. I mean, listen. How does it get? First of all, I don't understand how people can honestly say that we are equal.
The 60s.
It is the 60s again.
No, I know when they're talking about sore lovers.
Oh, the sore. Well, that's a different story. But it's the 60s again. And the worst part about it is I feel like it's getting worse. Like I feel like we're going backwards. Like in another 2 months we might be in the 40s. What's next? What is it that we can do to make this better? And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because I feel like this podcast, I feel like there's so many people that live in their perfectly insulated bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they look in the mirror and they're like, yeah, I'm liberal. I'm good.
Coiffed,
I'm safe.
got my pearls.
Things. I am a sore lover. You know, I have it all buttoned up. I know who I am. I know what it is. And I'm okay. And then they just motor along. And when they see something happening like this, they say, oh, well, you know what? I don't have a kid in school, or, you know, whatever it is, rather than digging deep and jumping in and getting involved and saying, you know, we don't get out of this.
Correct.
We don't get out of this, at least using Germany as a reference. At least Germany said, we have got to actively, legislatively put a stop to this shit, so nobody thinks that we're going to do this again, because we're not going to.
Correct.
Populism aside, what's going on currently aside, they have worked hard to stamp it out. We have not done that same thing here. What we have done is said, woohoo, yes, civil rights, everyone's great, move about the country, without honestly having a reckoning to how we got to the point of civil rights in the first place.
And I think it's important. We
talk about Reconstruction, but we jump over Jim Crow. You can't do that.
I think it's important to note, to be aware that it's not just the government in Germany. So, you know, if you're a movement teacher, which obviously a lot of people on here, we are movement teachers, you know that you've come across people just from all different countries, right? When I come across my German colleagues, their response to me in a good way is palpable. If I've had the chance to engage in conversation with them about race discussions, they literally say, why won't your country recognize? And I was like, what's that? What's that? Can you send a memo? Can you send a memo? You are asking me? And they're like, the one woman in particular, I don't remember her name. She said, in Germany, and she's maybe like 7 to 10 years older than me. And she said the country as a whole recognizing what was wrong with Hitler being in power is why German citizens understand.
But does that come
She's,
from the top down? I
yeah, in
think
this
the
particular
government
instance.
said no. And the people, even the ones that didn't want to agree with it, had to get on the same page. They weren't given an
An
option.
option.
Does that mean that they don't have freedoms? Well, I think the word freedom has gotten to be this murky quagmire of poop.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, you can be free without being a dick.
Correct.
And if the only way you can be free is to be a dick, then maybe you have a problem. And then we have to legislate dickery, and then you've got sore lovers. Kidding. I had to throw that in again. I missed it. But in all honesty, at some point, we have to say, for the sake of civility, for the sake of the fiber of who we are, morally, ethically, as mentally, as a nation, we've got to find a way to figure out what freedom is. Not this BS nonsense about, if you take away my this, then I'm not free. Dude, if I tell you to wear a cloth mask on your face and that makes you not free, what I would like to do is take you then to the jail, or no, not the jail, the prison, and I want you to see what being incarcerated or oppressed looks like.
Martin writes, but convos with Black Germans may yield a different answer. Absolutely. We know
100%.
many examples of Black German experience. And so that's a bigger topic, because we know how Blacks are treated
Worldwide.
across the world.
But you
That's
have
a bigger
to start somewhere.
Yes.
And Germany took a start somewhere. And listen, if my father was still alive and he knew I was driving a German car, he might die. That might kill him. He had big issues with Germany. He was stationed in Germany in the 60s. He had big issues with Germany. But right now, we are starting from nowhere. In fact, there's nobody starting.
No, we're starting from I was going to say, we're in the negative.
We're not having conversations. We're not doing any of the right things. So nothing can happen. And I think that's the point, isn't it? You shut down the conversation. You can then pretend like everything is okay. Meanwhile, everyone's setting off fire alarms, the ones that can get to the alarms, and still nothing is being done because the conversations have been
correct. And the lack of doing anything catapulted people who already felt like they were being infringed upon. It catapulted them forward. When you listen to more credible news outlets like NPR, they speak about, when they talk about the race war and when they talk about these right-wing extremists, somewhere in that conversation, they bring up Timothy McVeigh. I know exactly where I was during the Oklahoma bombing. They come back to the manifesto, and of course I don't remember the name of the organization that he was reading page from page. They're like, you could follow his actions and know what that manifesto was. They keep going back to Timothy McVeigh. Not that he started it, not that he was the beginning, but it was sort of a turning point where they were like, oh, wow, okay, they're really ramping up. That was 30 years ago. I was in Texas. I was dancing for a Black dance company, y'all. Don't make that face at me. I was 20 years old. I was dancing for Dallas Black Dance Theater. That was 30 years ago. And we haven't, the needle has moved, But it has moved in the wrong direction.
Listen, the Southern Poverty Law Center and the FBI have both released reports stating biggest threat
unequivocally,
to our country,
without a doubt,
is white supremacy and domestic terrorism. And I dare say that because the first word of that is white, nothing has been done. Nothing has been done. And
correct.
I forgot, shit, I didn't write it down, but I was reading a little bit about that the other day, and a lot, the CIA, the FBI, these big agencies whose job it is supposedly to keep us all safe, are all saying this has got to be managed. It's got to be managed now. Something needs to be done. January 6th, they knew what was going to happen on January 6th 3 weeks before.
You can go back before that.
Yes,
you can go.
But
you
they
can go
actually
back.
had the hard and fast plan, dates, times 3 weeks before. Nothing was done. They're still trying to pretend like nothing happened there.
Yes.
And all of us as people, I've not met one person that hasn't said that it was completely bananas. The populace says that it was completely bananas, but our lawmakers, the people that have the power to do something about it, are twiddling their thumbs and flossing. This is why things don't get done.
And
so
you can go back.
Freedom for who?
You can go back to Michigan, where white men stood with assault weapons as free as jaybirds. No one was asked, do you own this gun legally? No one was asked, do you have a permit to carry this?
There, though, that's the other thing.
They
didn't just happen. It happened across the country.
These are clear. They are lessons to younger white men. So we already know that white men, when the world is too much and there are no more pearls to clutch, they get to run around and shoot up schools because they don't know what to do with their angst. They don't know.
Don't forget that, because they're sad because nobody wants to be their sore lover.
Right.
So they become sad about that, and then they go shoot that up too. And they're depressed, sad, and they're
are giving every single white male child who stands on the precipice, they are being given permission to know that the rules don't apply to them and they can run amok because they see it in the adults. They see it that you can join a police force and it gives you permission to beat Black people.
So that's the message they're getting. What are the messages that others are getting?
Yes, James, absolutely. Play by play here.
You're right. The game book has been written, and the Proud Boys are following it, and they're everywhere. And who are those people? The Oath Keepers or the Care Bears, the Promise Friends. Who the hell makes up these stupid ass names anyway? Like, your Disgruntled Man Club. You couldn't come up with a more interesting name than that.
It's all of that, and then you go back to a place like Southlake, and you don't wonder. Well, I should say, brown people don't wonder. They don't wonder why these kids feel free to run amok and sing the N-word, and shout it out in the hallway, and to tell racist jokes about lynching. You don't wonder. They feel comfortable, and they feel comfortable because it happens in their homes. There is peer pressure, right? There is hanging with a group, and there is all of that stuff. But they are hearing this in their homes. They have this level of comfort because it is how they grew up. It is how they were raised.
It's what they know.
It's what they know. And when there are 18 Black kids who graduate out of a school of 700, they know they have the leg up. They
Listen,
know.
my mother runs a preschool. She's insane because she's been doing this for like 35 years or something like that. And there's always some little kid that comes in and calls her the N-word, or the Muslim teacher who wears a hijab calls her a slur or something like that. Always. This always happens. So then they call the parents, and the parents come in. The parents always say the same thing. Ready? Are you ready? I
have no idea
where
they
that
got that
ever.
from.
We don't speak that way at the house. Are you sure it wasn't one of the kids around here that taught them that word? I would, Johnny, let's go home. And
Little Johnny wasn't even in the door. Little Johnny was opening the door, but it's one of the kids in the preschool that taught him. Little Johnny, 1 foot ain't even all the way across the threshold.
Johnny walked in the door and he was singing the song, whatever it is. And, you know, my mother says, listen, because my mother takes no shit. She's like, listen, you can say whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. If it continues to happen, Johnny won't be back. And then the parents are like, how could you treat a child this way? And then they start crying. The mother always cries, and the dad always puffs up. But at no point does anybody ever say, I'm really sorry that this happened. I'm going to do better. Do you know why? Because they don't have to.
And no one...
But that apology would be demanded.
So that is brought up in Southlake as well.
Yes.
No one ever has to apologize. And the young woman who's speaking towards the end of the first, she says, here I am. I'm a sophomore in college. And this is still, she's like, what happened to me in high school is still a part of my life. She said, but I know the principal and that kid, the minute they walked out of school that day, it was done. It was over. They haven't had to think about it. She's like, and there's never been an apology. No one apologizes.
And that's the point. If you scroll back to what Everly says here, the first time I heard the N-word was in
elementary school.
And when you are called something, I don't care if it's a black slur, it's a gay slur, it's a slur of the day, whatever, it's a slurry. Whatever it is, it imprints in your mind. You feel it viscerally. I don't care how old you are. You always, it hits you. So, you know, these kids who have to experience this, it's essentially building blocks of pain, trauma around
adamantium.
And then the people who say it, it's nothing to them. It means nothing to them. That's, again, this is why we have to stop with this words don't matter thing. Words matter.
I want to go back to what Hanan Boo says. Maybe the solution is to change the definition of the N-word to make it mean the best and let them say it all day. It needs to be taken away from these people. No, the solution is not to change the definition. I don't know. I don't know if you're black or not. The solution is not to change the word. The solution is not to use the word. No other race, culture, nationality. I don't have time to consult Webster's or Oxford to define all those differences. Uses the racial slur that was put upon them as a term of endearment. Now, the conversation about why Black people use it, I'm going to set this aside over here. When white people say it, it gets really convoluted. They're not using it in solidarity. They're using it to hurt, harm. The solution is to change the definition of the word. You cannot change the definition of a word that is 400 plus years old and rooted in hate. and rooted to say, you are less than.
Agreed.
Put your neck under my boot. And that statement, and I understand that you're writing this to offer an option. And so please don't be offended by my tone. This statement implies that Black people should buck up and allow this word to be used so that its meaning gets degraded to the point where it doesn't have that. Do you know how many years? So we should wait another 400 years to not be called the N-word. And so by doing so, you would then give permission to people to use it. Maybe they mean it as a brother sisterhood, or maybe they just mean it to be an asshole. No. Why do the survivors of trauma have to experience more trauma in the necessary change? Why can't people just stop being racist?
It's kind of like when people say, you know, if she hadn't worn that halter top, then she probably wouldn't have been molested. Well, okay. Well, what about the girl that was wearing a jacket, or the girl that had
Mumu
on, the girl that was wearing a spacesuit with a helmet
and moon boots?
You know, it's one of those things where the solution isn't.
The solution keeps the degraded.
Well, I don't even know that I see it. I just, that's just not a solution. It can't be a solution, because at the end of the day, language is language, and you can't take the meaning away from a word like that. You can't change the meaning of a word like that. This is a phone. If I put it between two pieces of bread, it's still a phone. If I hang it from my neck, it's still a phone. And that's what we have to remember with that word, and with other words that subjugate people. You know, again, we have a responsibility to employ critical thinking and to do better, not to dumb things down so that people don't have to show up. People need to do better. Your job as a citizen of this world is to do better.
Well, and it also, so here's another example.
Thank you, honey boo. It just, by the way, and I don't know that I've seen you before. Welcome. We are very passionate people.
Passionate.
We flap arms a lot, but if we're sounding aggressive, it's not directed at you. I'm so glad that you're sharing your thoughts here. I really am. But, you know, I just wanted you to know, this is the way we are. We were born this way. We're local.
Well, and here's another example for the audience as a whole. So the woman who spoke before Congress a few months ago during the centennial of Tulsa, she's 107 years old. She was 7 years old during the Tulsa massacre. Why should she have to hear that word? I'm appalled that she has to hear that word. Why? She's 107 years old. For 7 years, she lived in a town where Black people owned businesses, where Black people prospered, where Black people were the political icons in this little town. And her town, as a 7-year-old, was destroyed because white people didn't want Black people to have it. And for the record, it was a white woman who started that. Just because a kid the shoe shine boy couldn't go to the bathroom in the building he was in, so he had to run out of that building where he worked and run into another building. And there was some confusion between him and the white girl elevator operator. And that is how Tulsa started. Because God forbid a Black boy should talk to a white woman or whistle or not do anything and just be accused of it, which happens as well. So this woman who is 107 years old, She doesn't deserve to hear this word that I'm sure she heard over and over and over and over and over again. And it was not meant as a term of endearment. It was meant to tell her who she was and where she was not going to go. And if you don't believe that, then we're going to burn down your town and you're going to run for your life.
Oh, and P.S. Yeah, of course, Harmony got the name in there and the link.
Thank you, Harmony. Pew, 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 pew.
But more important, remember, it wasn't just her identity that was stolen from her. Her life was stolen from her. She went from being a person of means of affluence.
Yes.
Because that, it was Black Wall Street. That area was wealthy and professional and Black, to growing up being a servant who
Yes.
had to work for people, not the same people, obviously, people who essentially stole her life. And if you can imagine the pain and the trauma that then imprints and is passed down through generations, that's why this stuff that is happening now, Southlake and every place like it, that's why it's got to stop. That's why we have to keep talking about this.
And she walked around, different stories that I was reading around the centennial. Black people walked around Tulsa seeing white people wearing their things,
Yes,
their clothes, their jewelry,
all of it.
They walked around watching people who had destroyed their town, killed people. We know that they are searching for the mass graves. Let's think about that, the mass graves. We know that no resolution has come to these people. They raised $30 million to celebrate the centennial, but this woman who spoke before Congress, she and her brother are impoverished. Her entire life was taken away from her. And she Black, so she's still around. She's 107 years old. Looking so cute, and not even anything close to 107. So cute. We're not going to ask this woman to sit and be patient so that we can take away the power that the N-word has. We're not going to ask her to forget 100 years of trauma that she's experienced daily. Let's put that into perspective. She is 107 years old. We're not going to ask her she may not want the N-word to mean less. That's something else. White people don't get to do that. You have to go ask a bunch of Black people how they feel about making the N-word different. But you don't ask. Right. And my dad would have a different response, and I respect his response because my dad is 84 years old. However, this aftermath is what we see. This 107-year-old woman who has had no resolution to the overt racism that she's experienced her entire life is why towns like Southlake exist.
And
if you are
mindset of being patient, the mindset of being I can't find my headset. The mindset, let's just be patient. It'll be fine if we're patient.
Don't you think 100 years is that's a long time?
Listen, as far as I'm concerned, it is audacious to ask people who have struggled and then have been blamed for their struggle to
Correct.
be patient, to wait around and hope and pray and rub tea leaves all over your body and spin around in circles and do the right thing and get the right hair and get your nails done and speak the right language and be the right height, to be patient. Because what has always been demonstrated is that yardstick moves. You can be patient today, tonight, and into the next day and night, and you will still not ever be enough. So you be patient. How much patience can you ask of people who are raising their children, who are telling their children to be patient? It's bullshit.
Amit writes,
at all.
the problem is that people feel a need to belittle others to feel better about themselves. Yes,
In part,
yes,
but it's
for
more than that.
sure. But it's a caste system that there are white people who do not want, it's not about them feeling better about themselves. There are white people who do not want to lose their privilege, period.
Period.
They want, that's not about feeling better. That's about power. They want to run the banks. They want to run the governments. A lot of you guys don't know the public school system exists to create a labor force. The public school system exists to create a labor force. Think about that. When you set up a system, so in Chicago for sure, not in my town, but in Chicago for sure, taxes go to your school area. Okay? So if it's an area where no one owns a home, or the home is in an undesirable neighborhood, that's not rocket science. That school will have less resources. If the school has less resources, then the kids are less educated. This is not rocket science. So when you encounter a town like Southlake, and Southlake, there are hundreds, thousands of Southlakes across this country. You can get in, but you better know your place.
Yes.
You can buy this house. We might even kibitz with you, barbecue with you, because you have a number. How gross is that? How gross is that? Whether you were a survivor of Hitler's reign and you have a number tattooed on you, or whether you were branded because you were someone's property on a plantation. Do you see now how weighted it is for a kid to come up to another kid and say, what's your dad's number?
Right.
So these are the same. Putting a number, putting a brand on someone, those are the same things to me. I got an issue with Q Dogs for that. And I told my little play brother, I said, you got
Q Dogs.
Fraternity. Misty, I'm gonna snatch that card.
You already took it. Damn it.
Black fraternity, they brand. And I asked I'm like, what are you doing? This was like a long time ago. I looked at my little brother and I was like, he's like play brother, be black. We got like play brothers and play cousins. I was like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you go back to that?
Right.
And so, because the brand for black people, we know what gets branded. People brand their cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They added an H and it's chattel slavery. So, I mean, it's the same thing, right? They branded their cattle. So, no, we don't want to be patient, because being patient is why cities like Southlake still exist.
Mm-hmm.
Let's remind you guys, this jumped off in 2018. And the thing that I found so interesting about the circumstance of Southlake was that could have just as easily have been a story about a girl being gang raped. The circumstances were the same to me.
For sure.
And like that is still that white male privilege. You get to do whatever you want to do because you are comforted and netted and surrounded and insulated by your white money. That whole scenario, that party, that after party from the dance, that could have been a story of a gang rape. Well, and if it had been a little lily white blonde girl who had been gang raped, the perpetrators might have actually gotten into trouble.
Well, I
There
mean,
would have been some consequence. It would
maybe,
not have suited, it would not have been a consequence to fit the actual crime, but there would have been something. No, we're not going to be patient anymore.
maybe. I think that this patience part, I don't know if you guys saw, I'm sure you did, but the officers who brutalized and murdered Elijah McClain a couple of years ago, I think it's been over 2 years, maybe 3. I think it was 2018 actually, so 3 years, have finally been indicted. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Elijah McClain case, it's a young man, I believe he was 17, might have been 18, but no, I think he was 17. On the spectrum.
On the spectrum.
Bye, Amit. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
But on the spectrum, so though it was June and it was hot and it was Colorado, which gets pretty darn hot, he had a like a skull cap on, and he was in a store, convenience store. He was accused of looking weird or being weird, and he said he's on the spectrum, he has issues. He left, he's walking down the road because he's wearing a hoodie and a skull cap. The police pull him over. He's walking, so he wasn't, I guess they stopped. You know what I mean? They didn't
walking while black.
He was walking while black at night in a skull cap, and then he was dead. He committed no crime. He did not assault or offend anybody. When the cops approached him, he said he was afraid. He explained that he was on the spectrum and sometimes his behavior looked different. And they harassed him and they tased him. And then the ambulance came because he was starting to have a moment, because they were kneeling on him or holding him down in a way where he started to lose consciousness, whatever. They shot him up with ketamine and killed him. Ketamine,
AKA horse tranquilizer.
a situation where the police absolutely inflamed the situation, and then his family had to fight to get the video, and the video came out and it is egregious. I am not recommending, if you have a soft heart at all, that you watch it. It is so fucking traumatic, especially if you've got a child in that age group, a black or brown child. But then the fact that it's taken this long for that family to see this indictment, those officers, some of them were back working again. Others were, I believe, what do they call it? Administrative leave with pay. 3 years. Finally, there's an indictment. But I wish we could say that the tide is turning. I wish we could say, okay, now we don't have to be patient anymore because now things are going to start to happen. But I don't believe it. What's his name? Dante, the one that was killed in Minneapolis by the officer that accidentally pulled out the taser instead of the gun and said, oh shit, I pulled out the wrong gun after she murdered the kid. That officer was also just indicted. Again,
Well,
I'd love to say I feel positive that things are going the right way. But why would I?
Robin, if you're still on, because I'm going to botch this story, but a young black boy was just not okay. He did carjack. I'm not excusing his behavior. He did a bad thing. The police officer, after he was down, punched him in the head, the back of the head 3 times, after punching him in the face. Shoved a flashlight in between his butt cheeks, saying that, well, he had a gun. But if he's down on the ground and you have him subdued, again, I don't excuse his behavior. If
What
he's
does a
carjacking,
flashlight in his butt cheeks have to do with him having a gun? Like, if I
what
think
does
about, like,
punching him?
defending yourself, Dante Wright, thank you. How do you defend? I'm afraid this kid has a gun. Let me put a flashlight in his ass.
What does punching him in the back of the head 3 times do? What I have an issue with this. And people, I know police officers, I have police officers in my family, yada, yada, blah, skippy. But I say to them, if you have a fear of your life encountering people, then you should not be a police officer. The job description implies that at some point you're going to be in danger.
But we're getting back to privilege there, because how many doctors, how many times have you seen in the current COVID bonanza that we're dealing with, people say to nurses and doctors and other first responders, well, you know what? That's the job you chose. You chose to save lives, so you should be able to handle any pandemic or whatever it is, because, why are you whining? You made that choice. Well, why does that not extend to law enforcement? Is their job
no, that's yes,
more
exactly
important than the
exactly.
other job? Not at all.
The officers and paramedics were indicted because they had the gall
that's
to
when they were put on leave. I believe the reason why they were put on leave was because they had the gall to reenact the chokehold. That I don't think that's what created the indictment. I don't think.
Oh, Robin, you didn't hear about that? Oh, okay. But yeah, basically, this kid carjacked, 17-year-old. Here's the deal. Crime does not happen in a vacuum. It does not happen in a vacuum. We are not talking about, so aptly named, white collar crimes. Crime does not happen.
Get me started.
Crime does not happen in a vacuum. Crime, so people always say, why, not protest, looting. He said, Black people tearing up their own neighborhoods. Okay. Looting is an act of despair. And if you are white and privileged, and if you are white, then you are privileged. I'm not talking about your money. Don't talk to me about why I don't have money like Jeff Bezos. Okay, fine. Privilege is about how you get to interact in a circumstance based on the color of your skin. It is about what will or may be assumed about you versus what won't be assumed about you. Okay? This is what we're discussing when we discuss privilege. So if you grew up poor in Appalachia in a trailer park with 5 hound dogs in the front of your house and a mattress, but you go to the big city, put on a cute outfit and get your hair done, you're white. See that? You got to change your circumstance, okay?
You're white or you're privileged?
Meaning if a Black person has the same circumstance, they're still going to be judged. Shut up, James.
I was like,
so what? Because white people will say, I'm not privileged, I didn't grow up wealthy. So I want to be clear about what privilege is. It is about how you get to walk into circumstances, because you, Pocono Mountain, Appalachia Trail living white person, you can go to Southlake in a cute Gap outfit and no one will even think anything.
And meanwhile, the football player's family gets asked, well, what number was he? And the football player himself was probably pulled over a bit.
Right.
Just for driving to his own home.
When we talk about privilege, we talk about your ability to assume that you can be in any circumstance that you choose to be in, and you can avoid those circumstances that you don't want to. White people don't send their kids to certain schools.
Your skin color does not create a level of jeopardy when you're just locomoting through regular daily life, unlike for certain other groups.
And you also take the position that should you be questioned, you're appalled with a lovely choreographed lean back, as if Why are you questioning me? So everything that we are discussing in terms of Southlake is because white people do not want to release their privilege.
They don't even want to own the fact that it's there. It's not even, you can't release what you don't acknowledge. And so by not acknowledging that privilege, they can then play, oh my goodness, you can't hold me responsible for that behavior. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Right.
But that
Or
protest says everything, doesn't it? Willful ignorance doesn't make you any less knowledgeable. It just means you're choosing to be an asshole. Pardon my French. Sorry. This flew right out.
And you have to be around your students. You have to, or your children. If you're in a teaching, if you're teaching movement, then you have students.
Sure.
And so, for instance, my son's art teacher is from Australia, and you walk into her studio, she plays classical music. There are art easels everywhere. There's paint everywhere. She makes her whole space is a canvas. She draws these funny little, the kids paint on the floor, like the parking lot. There's little bodies in the parking spaces with these expressions of like angst because it's like the car is running over them like every time you go into. So she has this really whimsical way about her. But you walk in and it says, no foul language, be kind. And she doesn't mean be kind because this is a little white boy or be kind because this is a little Muslim girl. She's like, no, you're going to be kind.
Right.
She has, you know what the rules are.
Right.
Because she has implemented the rules and she does so. And if you're going to be a part of that space, following the rules that's not your option.
Right.
It is not your option.
But that's the way a community and a society should work. There should be established norms, established rules.
Yes.
And that's what you follow. It should not be, okay, well, we have these rules painted on the wall, but really, depending upon where the solar return is happening right now for Uranus, then, that's all going to affect how we apply those rules. That's not what rules are doing or supposed to do, and that does not allow for a civil society to occur.
Or you could just bring your own Sharpie.
Right, well, that's it.
Just bring your own Sharpie and just write your...
We can't even assume a civil society if we're not willing to take a look at the establishment and say where it works, where it doesn't, and make change. That's why we're supposed to have lawmakers in the first place.
So if you're just joining us, because a couple of people just jumped on, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the Southlake podcast, which was put together because of what is going on in Southlake, Texas. And it is about a school district that is so immersed in its privilege that they refuse to see the rampant racism that is going on in this very small but incredibly affluent town. The last 10 minutes, because I gotta go soon, the last 10 minutes, we all know what happened in Texas. What is up with Texas? They wanted to secede. Who stopped them? Who stopped them?
This is my thought. Texas, we stole it, right? We stole it.
Give it back.
I don't think Mexico is going to take it back. I feel like Mexico is like, you know what? Pottery barn principle. You broke it, you bought it, keep it. But I feel like at this point, we've got to like maybe put it in a pen, something like cordon it off. Texas is like fungus.
No, it better not start spreading past those.
But it is, because the legislation went down in Texas. There are 12 other states that are trying to do the exact same thing. So
here's another circumstance of privilege. Everyone is like, okay, so let's be clear. Abortion DNC, and what's the other one, Misty? Top? Termination of pregnancy. Top. Yes. So DNC. So let's say little Susie Cream Cheese. Yes, I did say that out loud. Let's say little Susie Cream Cheese is 16 years old and she decided to, run amok with Biff, the quarterback.
Biff Buttstock.
The quarterback. Her wealthy, affluent parents can take her and get a DNC. See what I did there? That's not an abortion.
Exactly.
That's a DNC.
But
because they have
LaFonda DeJohnette's, because she's not from the right neighborhood, she does not have the means. LaFonda DeJohnette's and Jaquan cannot go to another state to get that done. They don't have the means or the opportunity. And P.S., look at the nonsense that surrounds Texas. Many of those states have also limited that procedure. So when we get back to Ms. Cream Cheese and her buddy Biff, who, by the way, are not speaking anymore. Susie and Biff, they're over. They broke up, but they have their whole lives ahead of them independently.
Susie goes 5 miles down the road, gets a DNC because she has heavy periods.
I actually don't think the DNCs are covered in that rule. I believe what I read was if there's any sort of heartbeat whatsoever for whatever reason, including health and safety of the mother, no. So a DNC wouldn't work either. Susie would have to leave the state.
But yes, she can. The travel would not be an issue for her. But Susie could go to her doctor and he doesn't have to write that she is pregnant. He can say something else.
Well, perhaps. But remember, Susie is a teenage girl, which means her lips are constantly talking, moving, breathing, whatever. And Biff, well, we all know Biff's problem. They're going to say something to somebody, and no matter what the doctor puts on that paper is, there's a bounty system. So,
yes, perfect word. Perfect freaking word.
So Giselle de Jesus might be very upset that Susie Cream Cheese captained the cheerleading squad and Biff, her boyfriend in her mind, but not really her boyfriend, have done this. And she can say, Mom and Dad, those two ding-dongs were pregnant. I know it. They told me. And then she can get $10,000. It is a bounty because that's what it is.
Yes. I'm sorry. She can get a minimum of $10,000. Minimum.
So now, I mean, this scenario can go in so many different ways, and every single one of them are disgusting. But at the end of the day, Susie will probably be okay. But LaFonda over here, LaFonda
is pregnant, and LaFonda can't stop working because she makes $10 to $12 an hour. LaFonda has to figure out how she can drive 9 or 10 miles or hours away, potentially have to reconfirm her decision to terminate pregnancy and stay 24 hours before she gets a procedure, have the procedure for which we all know can cause hemorrhaging, drive another 9 to 10 hours back home, and potentially have to go to work the next day because she's already taken off 3 days and there's no one to cover her shift for the 10 to 12 hours or the $10 to $12 that she makes an hour. Never mind the fact that she's out that money, and she's out that money times 2 because she had to pay for the procedure and stay maybe the night in a Motel 6 or maybe in her car, and then risk hemorrhaging because she can't, not double negative, yes I know, go to work because she has to go to work and just hope for the best.
At the end of the day, we know LaFonda's not doing that. LaFonda is going to Jimmy John Jack Raymond down the street at the corner, who's going to give her something that might work. And there we are back in the 40s.
Or she's going to have somebody punch her in the gut.
Or throw her down the stairs. Or do whatever.
Yep.
And then we still have to worry about Giselle de la Souce. That bitch. She might know about it and she might tell. And then she still gets $10,000.
And so Giselle has just made it her job to be all up and through everybody's business.
She is like Dog the Bounty Hunter Pregnancy Edition. And so now we're turning neighbors against neighbors, friends against friends, for what?
And just the intrusion, how do the HIPAA laws come into this?
Bingo.
That someone can say, prove to me that you did or did not have an abortion. Yes, that Giselle
is nosy AF. 100%.
So this is where we are, and this does not touch, because Susie Cream Cheese has up to 19, 20 weeks of her pregnancy, because she knows that her mom can fly her on spring break to some beautiful destination.
She's got to get out
where she can have the procedure and lay on a beautiful balcony overlooking the beach while she recovers, and then comes back so no one knows. Yes, they want to abolish Roe versus Wade. They want to abolish Roe versus Wade.
But here's the kicker, and here's what nobody in stupid ass Texas is thinking about. By implementing a law like this, you're going to find many physicians don't want to be in a state where they cannot do what they need to do to keep their patients safe. By telling doctors that they can actually be persecuted, you choose the word, for saving a mother, for saving a 12-year-old additional trauma, whatever it is. I bet that many decent doctors who deserve their license, are going to be running for the hills. So what that's going to do is leave substandard care for women, always the women that suffer in these things. You are going to create a complete paucity of care for women. Women will die, and guess what?
And there's already, amongst certain communities, there's already a distrust of the medical system, whether they are undocumented and they don't want to go, whether they are African American and they have historically a distrust for the medical system. You are going to further add to that distrust, because you're just going to be afraid that walking into the office, the doctor's going to be able to tell. Or what if it's just like, nosy Nina, the nurse, who was like, she's pregnant. She has breast tenderness. She's pregnant. Her last visit, she weighed this much. Now she weighs this much, her last cycle was this. So nosy Nina is also like, ooh, let me get in on that 10 grand.
10 grand. I can go to Vegas on 10 grand.
It's like, there are so many aftermaths to this. The aftermath has aftermath. Or a woman
has a consequence.
Or a woman has an incomplete miscarriage, and then someone says, no, you tried to have an abortion.
Right.
But there are spontaneous miscarriages. We know this. We know that women have spontaneous miscarriages.
And we also know women in places like Alabama and Mississippi are in jail for spontaneous miscarriages. So listen, the writing is on the wall. Good luck, Texas.
This is bringing women back to, I don't even know what it's bringing women back to. It's just a full on stop. And all of this to say you want to protect life, lies and deceptions, because the foster care system in this country is overrun. It is so overrun that it's It's overrun.
Listen, in my opinion, at the end of the day, you need to do what James and I are saying here. Just pack it up, bubble wrap.
Can we get a jigsaw and just saw around Texas?
Bury it, set it on fire, whatever.
And just let it float out.
It's gotta go. And sorry, anyone in Florida, Florida's not far behind. It's time, Florida man. Florida man to be a thing of lore. Anyway, guys, it's time to go. I gotta get back to work. But I love this afternoon thought.
This was kind of cool. We had a lot of different people on.
A lot of different people.
So for a country full of individualist libertarian cretins, why is there so much interference on human autonomy? You won't take the vaccine, but you could. Welcome to our world, Mr. Canadian, Caribbean,
the hypocrisy
West
of the American experience.
Yes.
Thank you, James, for joining us, Martin and Aaron and Vegan Barb and all of our friends and our new friends too. I hope to see you guys again.
Hanan Boo, we love you.
Yes, we love you.
Don't mistake our passion for
Emily, Robin. We are very passionate. We flap our arms a lot, but it's all in love. I think we're on Thursday next week.
We are
our regular Thursday PM, but I don't know. I kind of like this.
I like this. I do.
So I got to make sure I'm not training the Friday afterward. But yeah, you're going to see more Friday afternoon thought flows, or some afternoon, any afternoon. It's going to happen. So guys, looking forward to our next visit around the sandbox. Guys, watch the Southlake podcast. Well,
please watch the Southlake.
Please.
Listen, listen. There's no actual video to it.
Exactly. But check it out and share your opinions. We'd love to hear about it. Have a great, fabulous weekend. If you're in the U.S., it could be a long one for you, so enjoy. And if you're in Canada, enjoy quasi-reasonable government.
Bye.
Bye, guys.